Greetings brothers, welcome to the weekly tactics video. Today we're talking Inceptors. They've just been hit with a pretty heavy points cost increase, so let's find out if they're still worth taking. Is the Plasma variant still stronger than the Assault Bolter? By the end of this video we'll know just exactly that. Welcome to the weekly tactics video. I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and in this channel every week we do some tactics related content designed to help you get the most out of your Blood Angels army on the battlefield. So if that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing. So in this week's video we're going to look at like 5 main things. One, we're going to talk the points increase for the Plasmas. Then we're going to talk about how Assault Bolters have actually been made 5 points cheaper per model. So we'll compare the damage of both squads, and fortunately 4 Plasmas now cost the same as 6 Assault Bolters, so we can do like a direct damage comparison, and then we can also break that down at the end of the video. We'll break it down to get like a damage per 100 points, so we can just see how useful these guys actually are now. Based on the size of the squads, we'll do some survivability, we'll also look at some stratagems, and we'll finish off with some sort of summary where we try and justify just how strong Plasmas still are, and are they the right choice, and can you include them in your army list going forward after the second increase in as many updates, I guess. So let's talk Plasma Inceptors, and they are toughness 5, 10-inch move, flying Primaris Gravis models. Now, they have 2 attacks or 3 on the Sergeant, and they also have 3 wounds. They obviously are Primaris as well, so they benefit from all stratagems that can be played onto Primaris. And for Blood Angels, they combo up really nicely with Descent of the Angels, so you can basically make them hit on 2s in the turn that they arrive from Deep Strike. Now, Assault Bolters, Strength 5, -1/1 damage. Plasma Exterminators, either Strength 7, -3/1 damage, or High Power, Strength 8, -3/2 damage. The disadvantage of High Power obviously is those ones will end up killing your own models, so if you are going to be trying to reliably shoot them on High Power, you need them to be landing next to a Captain or a Dreadnought with Wisdom of the Ancient, or some way to reroll ones, otherwise in my opinion it's just too risky. Okay, so previously at the start of this edition I believe that Assault Bolters were 40 points and the Plasma Eradicators were 50. They put basically 5 points on both halfway through, and now they've taken 5 points back off the Assault Bolter, so they're back down to exactly where they were at the beginning of the edition. But the Inceptors the Plasmas went up another 5 points, so they're now 60. So that's actually a 20% increase in points cost since the beginning. So Plasma Inceptors are very meta. A lot of people play them, a lot of tournament lists include them, but as they continue to get increased in points, are they still more viable, or obviously a lot more competitive than the Assault Bolter variant? Bear in mind, the Assault Bolter variant is going to get a guaranteed 3 shots per gun, which means 6 shots per model, whereas the Plasma Exterminator version is D3. So obviously it's swingy, with an advantage. Obviously if you're going to shoot models, or you're going to shoot units with more than 6 models, then you're going to get the maximum 3 shots per gun. So good against some things, but obviously weak against armor, or usually anyone that's running like those minimum size unit squads. Now what's interesting here is with the hike of the Inceptors with the Plasmas up to 60 points per model, then you can see at the bottom of the slide 4 Plasmas are now the same cost as 6 Assault Bolter variants. So you know, some people have been saying for a while that the Assault Bolters aren't bad, so let's get into some maths and work out just how these compare if we're going to run these 2 squads, right? So they're both a 240 point squad. On one side you've got 4 Plasma Inceptors, on the other side you've got 4 Bolter Inceptors. So in this slide, if we were running 240 points of either sets, so you've got the 6 Assault Bolter ones against the 4 Plasmas. Now, what's important to note is that against all the targets except the cultists in this slide, the Plasmas aren't going to be able to maximize their number of shots, most likely. You know, against Marines, characters, infantry, heavy infantry, monsters, these sort of things. These are minimal size units. They're not going to have more than 6 models, so you're going to average the 2 shots on the Plasmas in the purple column. So what I've done is I usually highlight in green what is going to be the most effective, and I guess What's interesting here is against like Blightlord Terminators, which are the heavy infantry, and also against the cultists, the assault bolters are going to come out on top. But against all the others, your high power plasmas are going to generally come out on top. But bear in mind, there is an inherent risk of the high power plasmas. You have to have something around there to buff them. So if you aren't going to have that around there, then I guess your assault bolters are actually sort of holding on. They're definitely keeping up with those low powered plasmas. But I think it is easy enough to have something on the battlefield to generate those rerolls for your plasmas, so maybe not such a big deal. But nonetheless, the assault bolters, I guess, as the plasmas continue to get hiked in cost, the assault bolters aren't so bad. And bear in mind, when you if this was 240 points, as mentioned, then in close combat, which maybe these guys don't want to be in close combat, but occasionally you might want to go into close combat to finish a unit off, you're going to get more attacks, and you are going to just have more models in terms of survivability as well with the assault bolter plasmas. So now, when we look at difficult targets, and we do try and look at difficult targets when I feel the weapons are used to deal with difficult targets, and this is definitely one of those weeks. Inceptors have a lot of uses on the battlefield, and one of which is definitely to deal with screens, but also to deal with difficult targets. Now, new orcs, for example, are going to be toughness 5 and 1 wound. So in this case, you're actually going to get more value against orcs with assault bolters and more models. And I mean, that is not rocket science, but it is good to see it in as many, to see it in plain light of day, I guess. Also, the Blightlord Terminators, just weight of fire there is going to be very good. Obviously, the plasmas are going to get scuppered because the Blightlords have a 4+ invulnerable save, so you're actually not going to get the most out of their AP, and just, weight of fire from those additional 12 shots by having 2 more assault bolters is going to actually outweigh the plasmas here. Unless, of course, you luck out and roll high with your number of shots, but you're not going to do that against a squad of Blightlord Terminators, because it's not going to be very often they're going to have more than 5 models in that squad. Against like Dreadnoughts and Leviathans, sure, your plasmas are going to pull ahead again there. Obviously, the 2 damage is kind of neutered against some of those Dreadnoughts because it's -1 damage, but the additional strength from the shot will more than make up from that, along with the AP. And then what's interesting, I suppose, is weight of fire against Mortarion is going to get you ahead, but, and obviously Mortarion is -1 damage again, but things generally aren't good against Mortarion, and this is a good example. Like, you would be essentially getting 36 assault bolter shots against Mortarion, but you're just going to do a couple of wounds. So, Inceptors, not great for dealing with Mortarion, but I think we knew that anyway. And then, yeah, I mean, against like Deathwing and a few other things, the assault bolters are behind as well. But, the bolters, because of the ongoing price hikes, the bolters aren't nearly as bad as they maybe once were in comparison. And I guess just by having those ongoing price hikes, then the bolter models start to come into their own a little bit, because they can fit into your army list without being a ridiculous number of points. 180 points for 3 Plasma Inceptors is the equivalent of like 3 attack bikes now, and I know attack bikes went up as well, but attack bikes have more wounds, have more movement, have multi-meltas and storm bolters. Yeah, it's starting to feel like maybe, to me anyway, plasma are just sort of getting made unattainable, I guess. Like, they're just becoming too expensive for me to consider fielding them. I thought they were really expensive at 55 points per model, and now, yeah, I mean, it's just the pushing. I think they were probably pretty balanced at 55. If they just maybe taken the regular ones down the 5 points back to 40, I think that would have probably been enough. So then what we do then is just look at some survivability between the 2 different squads. And obviously by having 2 more models in the squad, you're essentially just adding like another 50% to the survivability. And you can see that in this chart here. Against multi-meltas, for example, the 4 Inceptors will be killed when there's 6 wounds made against them, and 6 Inceptors will be killed when there's 9 wounds made against them. So there's not much to say with the survivability, just that having 2 more models for the same points cost is going to give you 50% more survivability, because 2 more or 4 is is 50%. So the one thing to be said though is if you did actually run the squad with the Assault Bolters, then you would actually not be able to get the 1 CP transhumans. So I guess my advice would for Gravis models would be to keep them 5 or under. Same as sort of the same advice with Blade Guard veterans, is keep them 5 or under so that we can get that nice cheap 1 CP transhuman, which brings a lot of value. So really what we need to see, I guess, is we need to see just how much damage these do against a couple of things for 100 points. So we'll divide the numbers down to 100 points and see what that actually looks like a little bit later on. But first, let me just talk about the stratagems that we can actually use with these models. So yeah, the stratagems that are available really for me are Descent of the Angels, to give you that +1 when you arrive, and that is +1 is actually in shooting and in close combat. So you could arrive, decimate a squad, and then finish them off in a charge if you felt confident about that. We also have Upon Wings of Fire to basically redeploy them, remove them from the battlefield and bring them down 1 turn later. In the reinforcement part of your movement phase. We also have Hammer of Wrath, so we can potentially do mortal wounds when we charge the enemy, transhuman physiology as we talked about before, and then unyielding in the face of the foe, which basically gives us a +1 to our save if it's against a 1 damage weapon. So there's a few ways to actually give these guys a little bit more damage and also make them that little bit more survivability, and also move them around the board if they maybe jump in, destroy a squad that you need them to, and then move somewhere elsewhere. And I guess maybe that's one thing that you could consider more with the Assault Bolters, because they don't need to necessarily arrive near a buffing character or some sort of aura for reroll ones. And I think you could do a very cheap squad, 4 or 3 Assault Bolter guys, 3 just coming in at 120 points now, and that is bringing 18 strength 5 -1 damage plasma shots, and with the Descent of the Angels they'd be hitting on 2, so you could potentially be looking at about 15 hits, strength 5, so you could, against a squad of like 10 1 wound enemies, you could probably just arrive from Deep Strike, wipe a squad, next turn pick up, move somewhere else, wipe another squad. Great for maybe doing some backfield harassment or something similar like that. So we're going to look at dividing everything down to work out just how much damage they do for 100 points. And I've just picked a few of the options here, and the ones on the left we're going to be shooting on low power, and the ones on the right, as mentioned with the HP in the red text, we're going to be shooting them on high power. Now against toughness 5 orcs, the Assault Bolters are going to come ahead just a little bit, and against the Blightlord Terminators, unless you get really lucky with your number of shots, again, Assault Bolters are going to be just ahead. Against more durable Gravis Marines, then I guess you're going to see those plasmas pull ahead because of the multiple damage per shot potentially, and then against tougher enemy monsters, again, your plasmas are also going to pull ahead just because the more damage per shot. So I think what this really shows to me is that you now get to choose, right? You either keep your Plasma Inceptors, they are quite versatile, not so good against like 1 damage units anymore for the points cost, but they do, they are able to take out a large array of targets. Or if you're interested in killing like infantry and screens, which sometimes that's what you want to use Inceptors for, then I think the Assault Bolters have suddenly become a lot more interesting against, for 100 points, they are reasonably competitive now, and as long as you know this and you prioritise your targets well, I think you'll get a lot of value out of them. So hopefully you can see the difference in the new camera. It has run out of battery, and I don't have a spare yet, and I don't know, I'm still learning it, so hopefully the quality in the beginning of the video was a bit better. Anyway, moving on. Against the 1 wound infantry, your Assault Bolters I think are now going to be really good. Anything that's toughness 5 or less, your Assault Bolters are going to probably be the way to go. I do also like you can get a really cheap squad again at 120 points, and their damage for 100 points actually isn't bad against some of these enemies, and that's before we consider charges or anything like that they can do as well. They are in Gravis armor, so they aren't easy to kill in close combat. Now, the plasmas have gone up 20% in points costs, and I think they're sort of edging on the point where they are just becoming too expensive. I think you can still make them work, but while other units haven't changed, maybe there's something to be said about them now. I know some people had been mentioning in Discord to me that potentially a squad of assault Hellblasters now in an Impulsor. I was trying to do the math in my head real quick for that. That's like 280 points, and that's a guaranteed 15 shots. So I mean, you will still potentially get more shots if you roll well for the Inceptors, but I guess this actually maybe that means that some people might consider something like that. Remember, the Impulsor is an assault vehicle, so you can disembark and shoot from the Impulsor, and the Impulsor gives you something else to just go sit on an objective or something like that. They're not super easy to kill either if you give them the shield dome. So I guess it really comes down to now thinking about what you use your Inceptors for. You know, if you're going to use them to kill infantry screens or, you know, toughness 5 or less enemies, then I actually think the assault bolters are possibly the better option, just because they can come down anywhere. They don't need character support. There's no risk to them in terms of you don't have to fire them in high power. But again, when we looked at some of those difficult targets, you know, there were some places where they weren't really that far behind, and just because of the points cost now, the assault bolters are going to be more survivable because you're likely to just have more models on the board, or if you're not going to have more models on the board, they're going to give you a bit more flexibility to get more into your list, which is something to be said. You know, as of late, attack bikes went up in points, Sangre Guard went up in points, Vanguard veterans went up in points. I feel like the Inceptors as well went up in points, so 4 of the top tier meta picks for Blood Angels went up in points. So how are you still fitting all these things in your list? It's not easy, and maybe one of the ways to do it would be to switch out your Inceptors to just have the assault bolters and then use them slightly differently, and then maybe keep those other squads or those other units at full strength. You know, for me, I had to drop attack bikes, but maybe for you, you want to consider switching it up or something else. I think I will actually paint some Assault Bolter Inceptors. I think I've got some from Dark Imperium lying around, and I think I'm actually more motivated to paint them right now than I am to paint the Plasmas, just because the Plasmas, you know, I generally don't like Plasmas just because I don't have good luck rolling ones. I think in one of my battle reports, I think I did 11 wounds to my own Redemptor Dreadnought from shooting its plasma on high power. So yeah, I mean, my rolls of 1 just suck, and I don't like it. But I mean, I know a lot of people use the plasmas and use them very effectively, but I just wanted to jump in here, do a good solid comparison on the two. I really hope you found the video useful. We've got some other good comparison videos. I've been getting a lot of requests recently for new videos. I try and get one out every week, and yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out now that the points have changed, and we're also thinking of doing a tier list video as well to try and help people build lists now that all the points have changed with Chapter Approved 2021. So thanks so much for watching. Leave me a comment down below. Are you still running Inceptors? Do the Assault Bolters look attractive to you at all? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you want, you can also join our Discord. We've had tons of new members this last week, so thank you everyone that's joined, and continue to join. And we're always talking army lists and Blood Angels, and we can get a lot of good chats in the Discord, so do that below if you like. And then just remember, we are live a couple of times a week. You can tune in, and we've just introduced loyalty points now. So every time you watch the channel live, you'll earn loyalty points, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to let you bet on our future games on the channel. So we have battles every Monday night, and you'll be able to bet on the victor, which right now is looking good. You know, Blood Angels have won the last 13 games on the row in the channel, so hint, you might want to consider betting on Blood Angels, but that is coming this Monday, so hope to see you there as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one, brothers. By the blood are we made. Peace.